I read an article when Emilio Segre won the Nobel Prize for his work at Berkeley. And so, in fact, he was teaching at Berkeley. And so when I was reading this, and there was this journalist, Italian journalist, that wrote about where he was teaching, where he was studying, and so on and so forth. And they depicted the Bay Area. And there was the beautiful sunset and the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate and all that. And I say, my God, I started dreaming. So, this is a place I would like to be, 16.
I remember that the day I left Amsterdam, to come to Los Angeles, I really have no idea what to expect. I packed everything in 2 suitcases, and I bought a new camera. And I came here just with a spirit of adventure, the desire to learn, discovering, experience. But basically, I had no previous experience in the United States at all.
I remember exactly the 9th of February, 1968. So, and for me to see California at that time of the year, full of flowers, and so I mean, and for my wife was like landing in paradise. I mean, because we left in Milan, at that time is cold and foggy and miserable, and here it was spring, so I mean we I was already in love, but she fell in love too of this weather and place.
Never been to the United States before. Okay. So my image of the United States was pretty much what you see on movies, right? So, and in particular, the nice villas and large gardens and so on. And I don't know how many people who are listening to this conversation have seen Berkeley, but that ain't exactly what Berkeley looks like.
The first day of work was also memorable. For one reason, I was coming from the academic environment in Europe. I was wearing a suit, a tie, new shoes, and I was expecting to be welcomed by the head of the laboratory, who was a Japanese, in a very formal way. So while I was waiting at my hotel, I see a young guy in jeans and t-shirt and sandals, coming to me and say, hello. Welcome to California. So I couldn't figure out whether he was a technician or was an assistant, but immediately after he introduced himself, and he was Professor Itakura. So what hit me immediately was the informality, the simplicity of a human relationship.
So for me, Silicon Valley is equal to freedom. I feel much more free in Silicon Valley than, let's say, Milan. And I totally understand that this might sound a little bit weird for my friends in Italy, because they know that actually, in Silicon Valley you receive an invitation for a barbecue 3 weeks in advance, and you have to accept the invite, and you have to plan everything. You cannot just knock the door and walk in and have a pasta with your friend. Nevertheless, in Silicon Valley you have the freedom to change your life every time you think it's time to change it. And it's not only about your work, it's about your education, your knowledge, your spirituality, whatever is very open to change. And this for me equal to freedom. And this is what I don't have in Italy, and this is basically the main reason why I'm not attracted at all to go back to Milan, for instance.
The research, in Italy, they if you have a certain degrees, they don't even consider you working on something different. So if you have a PhD in physics and maybe you want to work on engineering, maybe they don't even, you just don't have the resume fitted for it. But I came from high energy physics, had a background in which I did many different things, and my advisor here was open-minded. And I think in Italy that's what they are not. She was open-minded, and she said this position was to work on polymer physics, so something completely different.
The Californian experience means, basically in my opinion, don't be afraid.
don't be afraid. Just move on and follow your path, and of course discover what you really want to do and do it. And it seems very easy, as you know. It's not that easy because the culture of determinations are in Italy is pretty quite big, but you can do it. Basically, discover what you want to be and just be.
I'm extremely curious, and not curious of not just the cultures. It's a big part of my curiosity. I'm interested in exploring the different cultures, and it's something that you don't see much in Italy. And so here it's just fascinating. And the other thing, I was just curious to explore myself. I think when I left Italy, I just think I didn't know myself, honestly. I didn't know what I could do, and I felt very, very naive. Like I felt like I was supposed to follow a certain path, and instead when I came over here, it was everything open.
It was true for me since day one when I got here. They pushed me beyond my limits. So to test what I was able to do, and I was able to accomplish what they were asking, and that led to more pushing and more stimulation and growing.
There is, to me, this openness that makes the working relationship much more free, much more free-flowing between different levels. So people move based on their capability, and I don't see that happening necessarily in all the situation in Italy. It's more, I've been exposed to people moving more for who they know than what they know.
Over there, every time I had to do anything around building the company from an administration perspective, I felt like I was working against, the system was working against me. And just, an example that kind of exemplifies it all, it was the certificato antimafia, the certificate that you used to have to sign to certify that you didn't belong to mafia. And that was required to do work with the governmental agency. And to me, that was like, here I am, and I'm an entrepreneur, every minute counts, and I'm in a 1 hour line to get a stamp that basically says, yeah, I don't belong to mafia.
It's more difficult for starting up a company, it requires more money, there is more bureaucracy. Here it's super simple. I just went with my friend to City Hall, we signed up the paper for starting the company. It's $110, and that was it.
There's a meritocracy. If you're good, you get pushed, and you get pushed to do better. You're gonna get more knowledge and information and more challenges. Something that I don't remember seeing very much in the same kind of industry in Italy. You were more like a tool.
First of all, when you are here, you have the feeling that you can do whatever you want. Of course, it's not that easy as you think it is, but if you are very committed in what you want to do, you can get it. So you have the chance, and it's not the same in Italy.
Pixar is definitely a unique place, I think, in the world, especially in this field, because it's the company that actually kind of created this whole industry of computer animation back in the 80s. So definitely I was lucky enough to hit it in probably the best possible place in the world. Now in Italy, this is there's going to be there's been an attempt in Italy to kind of create environments where a computer animation could have took place, but is particularly challenging. Definitely the economics doesn't work very well in Italy. Just the fact of the box office for an Italian movie, even if it's the most successful, is really tiny compared to what we see here in the US. And those movies, by the nature of being made by a lot of people with a lot of computing power, etc., are pretty expensive. Makes it very difficult to make it actually, to make it really practical to make a movie in Italy. I feel particularly lucky because I already achieved my dream. My dream was In 1986 or 87, when I saw the first animation from Pixar, my dream was one day to work in that company, for that company. And I achieved that dream.
There were a lot of unrecognized, unappreciated young engineers in Italy that when they came to the States, they did fireworks. They were so smart, brilliant, that they would make a big difference immediately. And for as long as they had been in Ivrea, they had not been able to express themselves. I think that's probably a problem more of the mentality, the lack of leadership of Italian management style. There was no sense of team in Italy. Here everything is team, we work together, and it really works.
The way that I approach work after my experience in the United States is so different now than the way in Italy work is approached that I couldn't find myself functioning properly there.
I was watching myself deliver this speech, talking to all the employees, saying, "You're all the stars, you're my stars, you're great, and we are the greatest team." And I mean, those are laughable sentences. You should say in Italy to a team of Italian engineers, they say, "What are you saying this for?" In the States, it works.
It's sad, but it's a fact of life. And Italy now ought to look at where their strengths are and build around the strengths area, and not try to recover or regain, lost terrain. Because in the fields where you lost a foothold, it would be foolish to try to regain a position.
I like high tech. I'm working high tech. My business in high tech there's no better place than Silicon Valley working high tech. This is the third place. It's like Hollywood for the studios, for the movies. If you're working movies, you need to be in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. If you're working high tech, you need to be in Silicon Valley.
It never dawned on me that Italy would be a place where much of the development of what I was interested in doing was happening. There were no companies that were working on the topics I was interested in. The things that I had learned and the relationships that I had built that would be valuable in sort of moving on to the next steps. We're all here. We're all in Silicon Valley.
When I moved here in '99, I had a company in Italy that was doing fairly well. My idea was to move that here in Silicon Valley and start, go out after venture capitalists and try to go win the dot-com boom. Unfortunately, I realized that I couldn't do it because I didn't have a visa. So I found a job, got a visa, got a green card, and then I finally started my company. So that happened in 2003. I actually went back to Italy to start a development center and moved back here in the US. And, this is Funambul. This is the company I'm still running happily.
It's interesting. The way I got to the Bay Area is kind of a series of events, not really planned for it. I was working in Italy at the time before moving to the Bay Area. I was working in Italy in a software company, and I developed a 3D software called Solid Thinking. MIT bought a few licenses, and so some of the students at MIT started using the software to actually use it for modeling and creating objects for their own use. In particular, there was a guy that was doing a PhD on animation, on 3D animation, and he really enjoyed using the software for building characters and environment, etc. Right after he finished his PhD, this person was actually hired at Pixar. Guido, you can actually give it a try. It looks like your skill sets into writing 3D software can actually be of good use over here. And so I said, okay, let me try to send my resume.
So this is, at the height of 2000, right after the bubble had burst, all of the major companies that were doing interesting work, we're talking about the birth of information retrieval and search was really at its height, was happening in Silicon Valley. And my area of concentration and study and research while I was in Austin was really computational linguistics, which is sort of, computer science applied to the study and understanding of human language. And so information retrieval sort of fit like a glove.
You know, there was a small project, you know, a tiny little project that, in fact, we didn't really even completely implement it, but we did part of the study and evaluation, etc. And it was about finding, it was a software system that would help hospitals find more quickly matching between organ donors and recipients. And you know, I think even though we played a very small role, I think that was an important, a very important project. Certainly not the most lucrative, certainly, but it had a very specific impact on people that needed that help.
Silicon Valley is, at the end of the day, a factory of new enterprises based on innovative technology. So the ability to really transform technologies into businesses. That's what's so unique about this, and there is a combination of skills and of peoples and of resources that allows to do this faster and better than anywhere else in the world.
I have to say that most of the things I learned about building teams and some business lessons, I learned it in my experience growing up baking focaccia and pizza and bread with my dad.
It's shocking how bad, some of the best Italian delicacies have disappeared and made way for McDonald's and Mrs. Field's cookies and all of the awful commercial stuff. But there's still some very, Italian food is still the best in the world.
I never felt like an immigrant, never ever. Nobody ever discriminated against me. Actually, if anything, the opposite. But I do know from some of the stories that these people told that there was discrimination, there was difficult times for the Italian immigrants. And so I can understand that position of that kind of fear of being recognized as being an immigrant and hide that. But as I said, in my case, no such feeling at all.
The more recent immigration of people who come from Italy to Silicon Valley is probably in most cases an immigration of choice. And my father was an immigrant as well. I mean, he was more of he immigrated to Venezuela. He spent some time in Venezuela, and he went back to Italy. And so, to a certain extent, I find it relatively natural, and so it's not a foreign concept to me, and it's actually I find it good. I find it a part of this more global world where people really move and live and have 2 passports or maybe 3 or whatever, and they are a little bit more citizens of the world. So I feel myself American, I feel myself Italian at the same time.
But I was still feeling, homesick. And then after a while I realized, well, even if I went back to Italy and I had a good job, it's never going back after a while. It's going to a different place. Italy was no longer the place that I left, and it's even more true today. I mean, I don't recognize the place that I left, and maybe because the environment where I lived was different. Maybe Italy has always been like this, and I never noticed, but maybe for a small part, but I also think that it has changed a lot.
I don't feel super attached to my roots. I feel that my roots and my culture has to merge and expand with the other cultures that I get in touch with.
My son, who's 5 years old, the other day comes home and says, Daddy, how come I'm the only kid in my class that has yellow hair? Because he's the only blonde in the class, because 40% of the class is Asian, 50% is Indian, and then there's Luca. And that gives you an idea of the kind of environment that these kids grow in. And as far as they're concerned, there's no black or white or yellow. It's just a number of kids. And this creates a very, very unique environment where multiple ideas, multiple cultures come together in a very harmonious way, really.
In a small laboratory, we had people from the Philippines, from Mexico, from Italy, from Poland, from China, and from Japan. So it was clear that the incredible ethnicity created a very cosmopolitan environment and very stimulating environment, because each of us was coming from a different experience, not only scientific but also cultural. So I really know I was part of one of the first cosmopolitan scientific team, and I enjoyed it very much.
The Italians that are here, they do share, they're most of the time they're like-minded. The normal Italian professional is here. Number one is a professional most of the time, so somebody that has been exposed to the U.S. culture to some extent, sometimes studying here, some other times through work. They're mostly in technology, but we all share a certain attitude towards, the hope that you can do something great with your life. So great hopes. That's something that, in fact, our friends in Italy have kind of lost over time.
On the West Coast, being Italian is a very positive thing, but on the East Coast, not so much, because I believe it's all the connection to the criminality over there. Then people tend to be shy of declaring that they're Italians, because the connotation of Italian is not as positive as it is in San Francisco. So that I felt immediately.
In any bar, in any restaurant, any friends that you're going to meet, everybody has something, a new startup, or is somehow linked to a new idea to start. So you feel, especially coming from the old side of Europe, and I say I was living in France before that I was in Spain, but I grew up in Italy, and the great difference between the positive attitude towards the future is something that gets under your skin.
Third and fourth generation, as you mentioned, have become educated, have learned Italian, have gone to study in Italy, and so the future is those people who are proud of the heritage and of the culture that their ancestors came out of, even though they may not have participated in it. It came from a very ancient land which had achieved many accomplishments.